say someone just for the purpose of a vote.
Right. All settled back in. How many years you been up here?
So if we're not doing
Just
the voting,
2 years.
conducting the business.
And then I spent
The
3
only
years
motions we'll
3.5
have will be
years,
to adjourn.
in Bluffton.
And if four of us,
It's the other side of the bridge going to
one
help
person objects to it there,
gated
I'll
community
object
there.
there.
That was nice, but the heat and humidity were just getting me.
I don't think we need
Yeah.
four votes to adjourn that.
We do not.
And then, I'm the
It's
type
up
of
to you
guy,
how
if I
you
can't
wanna-
mow my own lawn, I'm not gonna be there. I'm not gonna pay somebody else to come in. They wind up spending
Got
all
set up on
day.
the computer already, right?
Yeah.
Go back to it. So it's usually this way.
Yeah,
Click on it and see us.
and now it's over 100 down there.
I'll go check my.
Oh, I know. I'm watching this weather all over the place because we're one floor on our house. We've been there for 7 years. You come in at a lower level and you walk up the stairs. I said, well, Susan's got parking systems. I don't know. We'll see. It's no, I mean, I think living in Connecticut is the best area you can live in the country.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
got Boston is 2 hours, you got North,
yeah,
waterfront, you got everything.
yeah, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Unlike down there, I mean, you go shopping, you come out to your car and it's 150 degrees. You gotta let it run for 20 minutes to cool down.
I used to do a lot of work in the south. The car was running all day long.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, you get into it, you're comfortable.
yeah. Cheap to live, but that's all.
Anyways.
Evening. We're good to go, Lance?
It is working, so.
Okay, I'll even hit the button for you this time.
Advertisement never hit the.
Good evening. This is the Town of Winchester Zoning Board of Appeals, a special meeting on July 25th, 2023, called to order at 7:02 p.m., being held at the Winchester Town Hall, 338 Main Street, in the P. Francis Hicks Room, and also being broadcast on YouTube TV. Present tonight, regular members Paul Marino, John Pollock, Aubrey English, Ron Dew. Ellie Gunn is absent excused, and also is alternate member Paul Mitchell. So for tonight's special meeting, we've been asked to take a look at regulation section 2.G.4B, part of the Highland Lake District regulations. With us tonight also, George, why don't you just introduce yourself for the record?
George Clausen, I'm chairman of planning and zoning. We did the modified our regulations back in, I don't know what year it was, but it was recently, within probably 3 years or so. 2019, so 4 years.
So George will serve as our subject matter expert
Okay.
tonight. So the purpose of this, as I understand it, is to really clarify the regulation. It's not really to examine the application or to make a decision or even the hint of a decision one way or another on what the project would entail. It's simply, I believe you had questions regarding the regulations, and we're going to try to do our best to see if we can clarify those for you. So if you would, why don't you come up, and also if you would state your names and addresses for the record, and tell us what we're looking to accomplish tonight.
Well, good evening. My name is David Batista with Haley Ward Engineering, formerly Lennard Engineering, and at 140 Willow Street. And with me tonight is Rob Colabella, my colleague, also the same address. And thank you for having us. We greatly appreciate.
Can I just ask a quick question? You represent that address, you're not the owners? Correct.
No, 140 Willow Street is our office.
It's your office, but the subject property is a,
We're here to talk about a hypothetical that we would then apply to an actual application on East Lake Street. And we have another one. Yeah, we have a couple pending.
okay.
And that's why we
And so,
need the clarification.
yeah. So, myself and Todd Parsons, there's over 100 years of doing zoning work, and we couldn't make heads or tails out of this application, or this regulation that you cited, and definitively conclude one way or the other. So we talked to Lance, I wrote him a letter, he came back with his interpretation. I kind of agreed with him at the time, and then I started thinking about it again, and, you know, we, in the office, we're looking at where commas are placed and how the sentences are punctuated, trying to decipher whether or not it was a good interpretation. And then, you know, we talked to our client on East Lake Street, and he said, well, why would they even have this section in here if Lance's interpretation is correct? So we thought we would ask, and, you know, there's a process for appeals of the zoning enforcement agent's decisions, and we felt that because Jeff and Lance are so new, they don't have the context of hearing what happened with this regulation and other applications in the past and how it was applied. I kind of threw this idea out with Lance, and we agreed. And I think it's a good way to handle it, non-confrontational, just discuss it and figure out what it means and how to apply it. And I think the conclusions, whatever you reach tonight, will be very helpful to the commission and to the land use staff and to professionals like us that have to apply those rules. Basically, we want to talk about that specific regulation, and we made a hypothetical map up here of a lot, a quarter-acre lot, 100 by 100 at Highland Lake, with, you can see where the 35-foot setback lines are applied on the sides and the rear, and the 50, what is it, 50 feet in the front?
50 feet is the front and 35, the other 3 yards are the side and the rear is 35 feet, and the front is 50.
So you can see how very little room you have to work on these lots, and this map scale there is 1 inch equals 5 feet, so a house would be pretty big sitting on that quarter-acre lot. And so we can, you know, one of the things we do when we're trying to think through this stuff is look at different applications, different hypothetical situations to try to figure things out. So we brought some crayons with us, and we have 5 copies of the map which we marked up.
Yeah,
So,
if anybody wants.
yes, if you'd like to see this up close, we can pass some of these out.
Let's, if we can, let's talk about the actual wording of the regulation that we're here to actually look at tonight.
Okay. So, you have section, I guess it's 2, 4,
3G or 2G, 4, 3B.
2G 4B.
okay. Decks, patios, pergolas, terraces, steps needed for building access and accessibility features. And it says, decks, patios, terraces, and steps needed for building access, including accessibility features, may be added to buildings within the Highland Lake District within the required setbacks. So,
If anybody needs it as a reference, it's this page that has the highlighted square on it. That's got the direction of the regulation.
so my first question was, what does within the setbacks mean? Within meaning between the property line and the setback, that's the way I construed it.
That would be any area outside of this to the property line.
So, and then there are several provisos. A, the subject structure, other than the steps further defined below, shall be installed no closer to the boundary than the existing principal building or 9 feet, whichever is greater. So Rob drew the 9 foot from the
9
two
foot
sidelines.
offset from the side yards.
And then, item B says the structure is not within 20 feet of the lake shore or retaining wall, high water level, or front or rear property line.
So I put a setback line at the 20-foot mark from, say, the front yard and the lake shore.
So it's the
It's
question.
a hypothetical, just a.
Yeah, so there in the middle, you have the building setback lines, and on the outside, you have the limitations set forth in items A and B. So, we have a situation, you wanna just do a crude analysis of, yeah. And, yeah,
Just say small house.
Yeah.
Let's build it a mini.
all right, so the question is, can you build a deck that,
So this would be the house.
yeah,
you're gonna put a deck, the way we're looking at the interpretation, we're looking at it as you could be within the side yard, provided that in the front and the rear, you're not within either 20 feet of the lake or the front property line, according to B. And then if you were to encroach into the side yard, I mean, I guess you could go all the way up. You know, but there's other limitations on decks if you read through, but they're all individual items. A is individual, B is an individual, C is an individual item. They're not, it's not like it's and, you have to meet all those conditions to put a deck in the required side yard. It seems to us like it would be A, B, C, D, and then the last one would be, I think it's if you're over 400 square feet of deck, you need a special exception, but that's not what the only part that we're really trying to figure out is whether someone can build a deck outside of this setback from the HLD district, but within 20 feet, not any closer than 20 feet from the lake or 20 feet from the front yard. And we were just assuming that we drew the lake, this is a house on the lakeside. So I think the way I see it is that the way I've always envisioned it is that they wouldn't even talk about the front yard if they didn't mean everybody across the street too. So if you had a house over here, or just swap the lake and the road, and you know, you wanted to put a deck out so you could have a view of the lake from across the street because you don't live on the lake, they're saying, okay, yeah, you know, we know that this box isn't big enough for you to rebuild your house, but if you want to put your deck out here so you can get a view of the lake, we'll let you go to within 20 feet of your front yard. So you could swap these, and B is the same, whether it's the road or the lake or the lake or the road on either side, because they call it out as the front and rear lot lines. For B, that is. And then, you know, there's also a buffer rule, what have you, that goes along with all of this. But that's what we're trying to ascertain, whether a deck can be built between this area right, in this area right here, you know, going out towards the lake, or if these were reversed, going out your front yard, you know, and the lake was, there's the road and the lake was over here, going out your front yard, if you could be within 20 feet of the front lot line. And that's,
And the same question applies to A, side yard.
and the same question does apply to the side yards, to the 9-foot rule. And well, in the past, I've done both, and it was approved, you know, so, and that was just through zoning, you know, so I don't know, and then there's been different interpretations, so I've had them where you're looking for a special exception, or you're looking for a special permit, or, oh no, that's allowed, you know, so it's been different ZEOs, different town planners with different interpretations. So getting to the place where zoning, ZBA, land use, and professionals could all be on the same page would be really beneficial because of the amount of work that is done around the lake. Deep drawdown coming up, you know what's gonna happen that year, you know, there's gonna be a lot of people in here come August of that year, so.
So what's the problem, the side yard?
Well, both actually. We need to know if the deck is allowed between here and here, but not, obviously not within 20 feet of the lake, the way we read it.
That's the way B comes in.
Same thing from on the side. And I think they've afforded, and you only see this in the HLD zone. And obviously, the reason it's in only the HLD zone is to afford people the ability to have that view of the lake from a deck, or to get closer to the lake with their deck at the back, off the backs of their homes. So, being that Dave had one coming up, and I have one coming up, my plans are all ready to go. I have it set one way, but if it has to go another way, I could just change my app. You know, I just haven't submitted yet. I know the client's anxious. She's dropped off all her checks and signed every application that I need, but I think that I let her know we were gonna be doing something like this, and that we would be submitting after this, whichever way it goes. One application or different application, so. But we're just looking for clarification on how.
Would you like my rebuttal?
Yes, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. Well, no.
So it's not,
And George, I know that you had your hand in this back when the whole regs were being rewritten. And this wasn't just a regular rewrite of the regs, just finding errors and such. This was a rewrite of the regs, you know. And again, this is 2017, actually. So, that happened. And, you know, over time, like I said, since 2017, we've had a couple different faces in the office in the last 6 years. And like, even Mark, I remember Mark, he viewed it one way for years and then flip-flopped on me about 5 or 6 years into his tenure. And started looking at it a different way, and I'm like, all right.
So you and Lance initially saw it the same way, and then as you thought about it, saw it the opposite way, is that right?
Yeah.
So
we had a really nice discussion where they first came in, Jeff
I
and
think
myself.
what I'd like to hear is what your interpretation was, and then what yours was that was apparently opposite of that, or different than
Just
that.
in one section of it.
So let's look at what you guys both read it, discussed it, and came up with different interpretations, and let's hear what those are, and then we'll elicit George's comments, and we'll take a look and see what we think.
I mean, it was specifically around a project, but I like the way you've done the presentation, like anywhere in Highland Lake, and I think it fits perfect for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, essentially, one of the issues was, if you were gonna build a deck off the side, as long as you stayed in the box.
So I want to be clear again. The little box is the
setback requirements that are from,
Side yard.
for the real Highland Lake, so it's 50 feet from the front,
yep,
it's 35 on the sides,
correct.
and 35 on the rear. So that's, the little box are the real setbacks.
Correct.
The big box is what? Again, explain that to
This
us.
one,
A and B in that
that's A
section.
and B in that section where it says you could be.
So 9 feet on the side is what that line is?
Yes, they say you could be within the side yard, within the setbacks, I'm sorry,
Yep.
in that section.
Up to 9 feet?
Provided that you're not within,
With a deck, patio, pergola, or terrace.
yeah, no building, just
Right.
decks,
Yeah.
and then same thing with front and rear for B, within the setbacks, but as long as you're not. within
Okay.
20. So that's why we drew the.
Just so we're all looking at the boxes and everybody,
Bigger box.
one last time, understands what we're looking at.
Go ahead, sorry.
And again, I could be totally wrong, and that's why I thought it would be smart to be bringing this to everybody. But when we were talking about that 20-foot setback, basically from lakefront, we'll just look at it from that side, I basically said to Dave on the phone in a gut reaction, like, don't even ask for a variance, because you're not gonna get anything for development, house and/or, deck, anything. Just stay out of that zone completely. So now when you move outside this setback and you're into the 20 feet, and what did we say, this was 35? That's where I said, I think you'd have to come before ZBA for a variance. And they said, well, what's the 20-foot setback then intended to be for, essentially? Is that,
Yeah.
am I saying that well?
Yeah,
Okay.
why would it be there in the first place if you needed a variance? It wouldn't have to be there.
Right.
When you wanna put your deck closer than 35 feet,
We'll get a
go
variance.
get a variance. It's, yeah.
So their client in the specific is basically wants a clarification because they don't wanna go through ZBA if they can avoid the process. And so if
Well, we don't want a variance. They don't want a
They
variance.
don't
We
mind
have
the
to come for a
ZBA.
special permit.
Yeah.
They would rather not try to prove hardship because everybody
Right.
knows
thank you for
how hard it is to
explaining
do
that,
that.
yes. So that's kind of the gist, essentially. So we're sort of stuck in a, how do you interpret that area between 20 and 30 feet and?
20 and 35 feet.
Yep.
George?
Well, I mean, the heart of this, section B on this thing is your front toward the lake and then your front section above it. And that limits it to 20 feet, but there's no discussion in here of the side yard.
That's A, that's A.
4A talks
The
about.
9
side.
feet, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that defines it, so I'm not quite sure what you want to go differently.
I think the question is, if you're gonna be between the 20 and 35 feet, and if I don't have the question right, then correct me, but if you're gonna be closer than 35 feet, but not closer than 20 feet, do you need a variance for that space in between?
Or do you meet the rec?
No, need a variance.
Because you need a variance because you're coming closer than the minimum setbacks. Ron, that's what you're thinking.
Coming closer than that 35 feet. We give variances for less than 35 feet all the time at Highland Lake.
Right. In the Highland Lake,
Why would you need a variance from a permissive regulation? You have a regulation that says these types of structures are allowed within that zone,
They're,
period. It
they are,
doesn't say if you get a variance.
What I think it says, to your point, is for decks, patios, terraces, and steps that are part of building access, they can be within the 9 or the 20 without a variance.
that could be within the setbacks, meaning. the
Right, so
35
my building can't be closer than the 35,
Correct.
but a deck, terrace, steps can indeed be closer to the 35, but under no circumstances closer than 20.
correct.
Yes, that's the way we interpret this, the way this
And
is.
so if it's permitted in your regulations, we're not varying from your regulation, which means you don't need a variance.
It would seem to me, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I don't think you need a variance in this one. And Lance, you thought we did, or you thought we did not?
In this, Rob had done a nice job of like the 4 main questions, and it's in your packet. And I agreed with all of, like, question 1, 2, I said that interpretation is perfect. The third one is proposed new wraparound rear deck and stairs, expansion from the existing rear deck and stairs as proposed will increase the nonconformity for the westerly boundary side setback from the property line, which was 45.9 feet to now 33.1 feet. And then I basically referenced the regulation, and then what I thought was, so a variance application to grant the 1.88 foot encroachment will be required by the zoning board of appeals, but can be considered for approval by the commission since no part of the subject structure is within the 20-foot Highland Lake edge setback requirement. And if I'm wrong, that's totally fine.
But Lance, so the deck was the piece that was within, closer than 35, not closer than 20, right? And that was what was in that letter that you guys discussed. Seems that that's, the deck or steps or terraces or pergolas or patios would be allowed within that 15 feet without coming to us.
It's just, can't do structure.
Right, can't put the house there.
No, but the steps and the deck, everything is,
Accessory
structures.
the way you access it there too, that can be within
So if
that.
that's all they were doing was building a deck, yes, we wouldn't have to come here, but in both of our instances, that's not all.
There's other things going on. that
We have
need to
special
see.
exceptions that we have to get from you for other.
And we look forward to seeing
Right,
it.
we have that, but when we were filling out the applications, there's 2, there's a special permit application and then there's a variance application. For this, one of the clients, his client didn't want to deal with trying to calculate a hardship. And that's a lot of why we're here, but I came up with a client who had the same kind of thing going on. In my case, she's one of the ones across, she's down on Highland Lakes, but she's across, wants to put the deck in the front. You know, so it's kind of the same thing. So between the 2 of us, we didn't know which application to present. And there's,
Even without the water, she'd still be within, had to be within 20 feet of her property line for that deck in the front,
front door, rear. It's,
or rear, if she's doing it in the rear.
Right, but she's not.
Right. No, I mean, I actually think this is really good to get this interpretation on the record, because you had a question, and I think when we all looked at it initially, we had to think about it for a minute, so I think that's the interpretation.
Let me ask a question. Are these decks gonna have roofs on them?
No. Well,
Not in my case.
not in my case either. But, you know, like Paul started the whole thing, we really weren't here to talk about our specific apps, because these are just 2 that we have on the table right now. We'll be before your commission many times over with other applications for people around the lake who come to us all the time.
And I think, Ron, a roof would then make it a porch. Porches are not part of this.
That was why I asked.
Yeah, porches are not part of this, exceptions of the things steps, pergolas, patios.
Right.
Right.
Plays
All
even
that.
deeper into the imperviousness of the site. If you had a deck with a roof on it, that counts toward your impervious surface coverage, which then causes problems elsewhere with compliance long conversation with Lance on the definition of impervious surface, particularly with stone and gravel. And he's got that all straightened out with us, so we didn't have to bother you with that tonight.
All right,
It was
just,
really just this simple question.
For my reference, you would consider a porch to be an expansion of the main structure?
If it had a roof.
If it had a roof, it,
Porch,
yeah. And it wouldn't fall into the, I mean, these are pretty specific items. Deck, patio, pergola,
Yeah, doesn't say
terrace,
porch.
steps, doesn't say porch. Or, nor would it allow for the building, because the building would be,
All right, so that would be an
Still
increase in
within-
the footprint of the main structure when you add a covered porch.
right, if they came, and by the way, just about every property on Highland Lake comes for this, but if they were within the setbacks of the main structure, they'd have to come for the variance. And that's what every house there has to do, essentially.
But
But
additionally, if, just say, a client builds a deck in the front yard, and then decides 5 years from now, well, I'd like to screen that in and put a porch
Yeah.
on there. Well, that's, triggers a whole other
Oh, yeah.
application and a whole other, they have to come back. You can't just willy-nilly throw a screened-in porch.
nobody would do that.
Nope, yeah.
It never happened.
That never
I
happens.
get that, but that's, but
Yeah,
if
because then,
you're doing
yeah.
things the way it's supposed to be done, then, you know, if you're covering up your deck, like the deck access bill,
Yeah.
okay, you guys were all my permit, if I was.
No, your footings aren't big enough to put a roof on it.
If I was to go put a roof on that deck,
It would change, yeah, all right.
change everything.
But that's good for me, you know, in case people ask.
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
I wasn't sure about this idea tonight, but I'm glad we did. I think it was helpful to get this interpretation for the board. George is weighing in, and Lance, so that we have applications that are simpler for everybody, because it's a process.
Yeah, it is.
So, well, thank you.
I have one more question.
Yes.
What happens with decks over 400 square feet?
Well, we've made,
You have
Yeah.
the very last item in that section
Yeah.
is the final one, you have to come in for a special exception.
which we've made special exceptions.
I know I
Yeah.
have, but I'm looking at what you drew there in the sketches, and those decks are far larger than 400.
Those aren't real. That was an example.
Yeah, this is just.
This is when they come back and see us again.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna make sure.
Yeah, no, there's nothing real about this property here, yeah.
Yeah, this is very.
They've already made clear they're gonna come back and see us many times.
Well, I have to take that back, because the client I'm working on actually has an exact 100 by 100, 90-degree angle square lot. So I just took, because I had it drawn, so I erased everything off and just took her outline, and then added a lake and a roof.
Well, we're assuming the deck's not bigger than the house, so, in that drawing.
No.
Well,
No,
good.
yeah, I was just trying to stretch them to the limit, just to say, you know, it seems like somebody could build within this area. But yeah, I thank you for clarifying, and we look forward to submitting our applications now.
Paul, did you have a question?
I have a question. What about the, I know we weren't gonna discuss that, but the pervious surfaces, how does that affect this?
When we look at the application, we'll look at the pervious and make a decision there. We definitely are not gonna get anywhere near any of the actual projects.
That's on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. Yep. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other new business? Lance?
No, we had no applications, although 3 came in after our deadline, so you'll have a full meeting next time. We do have a question for you. I don't know if I want to keep it hypothetical or make it honest. We had a request for a building lot. So I had to do a little research into, it's not technically a building lot right now. And I said, first thing was, who makes that call? Is it the assessor's office? Is it land use department? Everybody's putting it on the land use department. So
Of
it's
course.
like, okay. So now we gotta look at, why has this not been a building lot? Okay, well, it's undersized, shocking. Well, I'll divulge it.
Is it in Highland Lake District?
It is at Highland Lake.
Of course it is.
So, they will be coming before you next meeting with the specifics. It doesn't meet the zoning, amount of land. We did a little exercise mock-up for them, and it's an interesting house that comes out if it does meet the setbacks, but they're gonna probably have to ask for variances as well.
Is it an empty lot?
It's an empty lot.
So when you say it doesn't meet the building lot requirements,
It's not,
Right.
it's not an acre.
okay,
Yeah,
none of them are.
right.
But this is a non-existing structure, so that's the
Correct.
difference. Okay, yeah, that'll be interesting.
So, just give you a heads up that they did apply, and I gave them the best advice I could to say,
Hey, is there next
this is how you're,
It is August 22nd.
Kingsbury Avenue,
I don't know if I'll be there.
no.
Ooh,
I'm on
that's
that one too,
problematic.
though.
Be real careful with that one.
Yes.
All right, so, hey, Lance,
And then
we,
lastly, I know you want to meet with Bill. I don't know if everybody knows Bill, but Bill Petroface is our
Hello, everyone.
building
hello,
official.
Bill?
And I think you met Jeff maybe the first
No,
time.
I don't think
Oh,
so.
No, I don't think so.
Jeff,
Jeff
I'm
is
the
our
new
new zoning
CEO,
enforcement
you'll be
officer.
overturning my decision.
Thank you again, guys. See ya.
We look forward to it, Jess.
So officially, Jeff shouldn't be attending these, and the reason why he's the hammer, you guys are who they come to complain about us. So
George writes him, he enforces him, and we unwind it.
right. So you probably won't see Jeff again, but I thought it would be good for you to meet him since I was asking Bill to attend anyways. Bill might get a little bit more involved, and we'll see how this plays out. The reason why I say that is because when these nuts and bolts kind of applications come in, for me to review them, like, they're literally talking to Bill about, this is what I want to do for the deck, this is what, that you guys have to give approval for. So it almost makes sense in my mind, staff-wise, to have a
Historically,
building official
we
be the
had
person.
Mark and Pam at these meetings
Right.
quite often for a long time.
Can I get clarification on one thing? I know we weren't gonna get into the pervious surfaces, but we just kinda said that, like, okay, you don't need a variance for that, it's within the setbacks. But then it kinda goes back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, that, wait a minute, you do because it doesn't meet this regulation for the impervious
Well, the deck,
surfaces.
so decks, and I'll verify that I have this right, decks without roofs don't impact impervious. or
Correct.
pervious.
It depends on what the surface is underneath the deck.
Has that changed recently? Just being in the industry, I recall an instance that we couldn't do one. And when I went to the
The
building
way,
office, they
it's
said,
actually in, I think, number 4 in this scenario. If the surfacing is being driven on and it has the opportunity to be compacted, then it's considered impervious. If you're doing it under decks or under walkways or something, and it's a more coarse sort of stone or whatever that you're being utilized, we could consider that as pervious.
okay, but the deck, the accessory structure is not.
Right,
Unless it has a
correct, no.
roof.
Okay.
No, it's just there's a little weird area about, what defines. And
The
we-
gravel's
we
been a
actu-
question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've actually been asked that, and we were trying to give some details and guidance to folks for
Just
other
from
things.
experience I had, that's why I was
Yeah.
asking.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great question. That's why it's good that it's case by case, in my opinion, because then you guys get to decide, is this appropriate?
Yeah, okay.
So we may have an issue for next meeting.
I know you said you may not be.
I will be coming back into town. I think last year I came to this meeting at like
Yes.
I remember.
7:30.
Yep.
I'm gonna be in New Hampshire that day and then coming back. Aubrey you look like you're not gonna be here
Well,
either.
I'm not for sure, I'm clarifying this right now, but I have a daughter that's supposed to be moving into college, and one of those, I don't know if it's the 22nd or the 23rd. If it's the 23rd, I can make the meeting. I'm finding this out find out immediately, and I'll get, let's still plan on having it. But, if,
We could push it out a week, if that works
We can
better.
push it out a week, that's fine.
Because there's 5 weeks in August, so.
If we can
usually you guys
reschedule
meet
for the
before.
29th, that would work fine for me and probably for you too, right?
yeah, it shouldn't be a problem, yeah.
You wanna try that?
Let's do that.
instead? Okay.
I think we should do that.
Make sure we have a quorum. Okay, and then the last thing, just since we are so short, we're gonna throw this at you too. Maybe Jeff would be the best one to talk. How can we talk about this without being specific? This was actually, I don't know if anybody has any experience. This was a variance that was denied back in the early 90s. Was anybody involved in the group at that time, or?
I'm gonna go with no.
No, okay.
How long
May-
have you been on, John?
Rodney's been probably
I
longer.
might
We-
have-
we- we
I
might-
might
we
have
might
been.
Ron.
Okay.
If he,
I mean, I guess we can be fine, that's fine. We should do this in a public hearing format, but just as a discussion, this was a question that came
Well,
up
if
for.
it should be in a public hearing, then maybe, we are live on.
Yeah,
Yeah, wait.
and we can't talk off camera because then it's having a meeting
So
without
let's,
being.
let's save it
All right,
for.
we'll save it,
Save it for
but-
the proper forum.
Yep. Okay.
So do we need any form of a motion to move that meeting, or is it something you can just reschedule?
Great question, do I have that
Well,
power?
you've gotta advertise. so
Yeah, we haven't
you need to
yet, so
advertise.
that'll be okay.
But you're gonna have to post it, because you've gotta advance for 12 months.
Yeah, again, do we need a motion from the board to change the date? Or is it something that we can just,
I think, why don't you make the motion, we'll put it in the minutes, and then we're covered.
so we move that we,
Okay.
we change the August 2023 zoning board of appeals meeting from August 22nd, 2023 to August 29th, 2023, also at 7 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know who wants extra meetings, but for us, this was very helpful.
I actually think it was really great, so thank you for getting us together. Any other new business? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hey,
We got settled back in.
Yeah, we bought a condo up at Clockmaker's Hill. We still go